Ricky!
What's up, man? How's it going?
Not much, man. You are a busy dude. You were just on another pod this week. I feel like every week you're on somebody else's pod.
Hey,
Pretty
man,
popular dude.
fingers crossed it keeps going, right? But this Monday I was able to join Ben with the Keep Purring podcast. Really good dude, man. Smart. His co-host wasn't able to join us because he was a little bit under the weather. But it was a nice opportunity, man, to go in there and talk about it. And it's always fun too to be able to have almost like a precursor for our weekly podcast too, so that I could kind of feel fresh and everything is already on my mind once we start talking. I've had a couple of days to stew and really get pissed off about what I was saying on the other show. So yeah, you always get the riled up version of me, man. Don't you enjoy that?
Yeah, dude. I love it. I love, and I also love that you spread the good news that is the Carolina Panthers. Man, you know what? There's going to be one day where we're going to be happy doing this podcast.
Yeah, I mean that's a great way to put it, though, right? Like I'm like knocking on doors, and I'm like, "Hey, have you heard the good news?" Like the Panthers are 1-12, but eventually I'm going to knock on doors, and those numbers are going to be inverted, right? Like it's going to be, "Hey, have you heard the good news? The Panthers are 6-4."
Oh man, that would be great. That would just be amazing. Just to
a man could dream, can he?
It'd be so nice. It would be great. Awesome. Let's just, so we got a lot to talk about today. So I would say we can just go ahead and jump on in. Unfortunately, as excited as I was last year about us sweeping the Saints, they come back and sweep us.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Saints game, which, man, I just hate losing to the Saints. I hate it so much. I would have been, honestly, I would have been okay with everything that happened this year if we would have just gone in and just destroyed the Saints. I would have been fine. I would have been like, you know what? We sucked this year, but we beat the Saints. So, but we didn't. So I think I'll just set it up like this. Everybody watching the game saw what happened. Bryce just couldn't get a second to throw the ball. And when he did, the receivers dropped it. So let me get your idea of what happened to us on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, that's a pretty accurate description for like a real quick highlight of it, right? The other part that you got to throw in there, because I hate how everyone thinks that just because we defend Bryce Young being a rookie and having a lot of cards against him in this current situation, it's also important to note that he missed some throws and that he made some bad throws, that he looked like he probably made some misreads. And it's hard to say for sure about like he missed an open receiver, right? Because we don't know what the progressions are on a concept of a play. And Bryce Young does, the offense does. Those are the only people that will be able to tell you if he did something wrong as far as getting to receivers in the progressions. But as far as the timing on the throws and stuff, the main one is the Mingo throw, right? The deep throw over the middle. That's a difficult miss, dude. That sucks because that was a touchdown. It was points. It's an opportunity that doesn't present itself a lot, especially in this offense. But that is exactly why I think it's almost unfair to point to that and say, and that's why Bryce has to be better. That's why Bryce is the problem of this offense. It's because those opportunities don't present themselves very often. And that's not on Bryce. That's on the offensive scheme. That's on the receivers. I mean, I don't want to sit here and harp on the one or two misses that Bryce has when throughout the duration of the season and these games, those opportunities don't exist, man. And we're sitting here criticizing a rookie as opposed to holding veteran players and coaches to the higher standard. And I am just of the opinion, man, and I spoke about this with Ben on Keep Purring, but I'm of the opinion that you should be able to hold veteran players and coaches to a higher standard than rookies. And that goes for rookie quarterbacks, rookie receivers, anything. I'm a big DJ Chark fan. I think everyone knows that about us at this point. But he had some very bad drops, man. And you got to call a spade a spade. That was a tough game for DJ. And those are situations where you're talking about a fourth down, right? A 4th and 2 where he finds DJ on a back shoulder throw. If he makes that catch, and he's got to make that catch, man. I don't care what anyone says. You've got to make that catch. It hit him in both hands and in the chest on the way out. If he makes that catch, you're talking about being 1st and 10 from the 12. That's a scoring opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another one was third down, and he threw it to DJ and hit him in the face mask. It got through his hands and hit him in the face mask. And again, you're talking about being around the 10-yard line if he completes that catch. These are scoring opportunities, man, that you have to hit. And you've got to catch those. And that would take a lot of that pressure off of Bryce when it's, hey, now you have this deep throw that you have to hit to Mingo, or else we don't have a chance to score. Don't put all of the pressure on Bryce Young. Yes, I think Bryce has to make that throw, but I think that it's a lot of context behind the fact that that's not the only squandered opportunity for points.
Yeah. And sitting there watching the Titans game and watching Will Levis in those last two drives and just watching how much time he had to throw the football.
I mean, he's just standing in the pocket, right? Like, and hey, guess who was starting for the Tennessee Titans in that game on the offensive line? Calvin Throckmorton, the real scapegoat of the Carolina Panthers, was the starting right guard for the Tennessee Titans when they beat the Miami Dolphins. But hey, guess what? At least we have Justin McCray, and at least we had Brett Toth, who's no longer here. At least we signed Gabe Jackson, who does not play. At least we just put Cade Mays back into rotation, even after he struggled. Now he looked better in this game, but I'm just saying that, like, the moves that we're making, dude, what are we doing, man? This isn't a competent football team, and every single aspect of that is showing. Sorry to go on a tangent, but you brought it up. It's your fault.
Yeah. Well, so I'm in a fantasy league, and I actually have both leagues that I'm in. I have buys this week.
Congratulations.
But I have a lot of 49ers in my leagues, so I watch those games pretty closely, and everybody's on like kind of the Brock Purdy MVP train. And honestly, you should. You can't fault a guy for having an excellent team, but he has an excellent team. Dude, that kid sits back there, has a cup of coffee, goes to the bathroom, the throw he made to Debo. Like, it was a beautiful throw, but man, that guy just like sit back there, like play some dominoes, just does not get touched ever.
And the fun part about that too is that a lot of people try to say, no, he doesn't have great protection. Look at the PFF scores for his offensive line. And this really this is one of my favorite things that we could talk about today, because when you look at the PFF scores, that's my whole thing, right? Don't just look at the PFF scores. They don't tell an entire story. They lack every bit of context, every bit of nuance that goes into what these players are being asked to do. A system like the San Francisco offense that relies so much on shifts and motions and play action, that helps an offensive line so much. You don't need elite drop back protections because they're not doing that. They're not asking him to do that. That is something that, man, have you guys heard me and Alex say how much we want to see more shifts and motions and more play action from this offense? It's not just because I've read it on the internet. It's because it actually has a benefit to this offense, especially the offensive line unit that has struggled mightily. I mean, we have been atrocious as a unit on the offensive line. And there are things that you can do from a conceptual standpoint to try to help those guys. And we just don't do it. And it's bonkers, dude. And it really just goes to show, if you want to sit here and make a full evaluation of Bryce Young, take all of that into account. Because if you had Bryce Young in San Francisco and he was in Bryce Purdy's position, it would be lights out. I have no doubt about it that he has shown the same abilities that Bryce Purdy has when it comes to being accurate in distributing the football. And that's what makes Bryce Purdy special on his own, right? Quick decision-making and accuracy. Because you're right, man. You can't take away from these guys either, though. Just because he has a good supporting cast, and that's the whole argument. I think that we'll talk about the Cam Newton situation a little bit later in this, but that's that whole argument about game manager and system quarterback. There's nothing wrong with it, man. You still have to be able to execute that. You still have to be able to do it at a high level. I would love it if Bryce Young could be a game manager at this point in his career. I think that every single quarterback would be ecstatic if they could come into the league their rookie year and be asked to be a game manager, because that means you have a competent team around you with an offensive vision.
Yeah, man. I just it makes you feel so bad for him, for all the rookies, for all the players in general that aren't the vets that aren't stepping up. Because I do think a lot of it runs on the vets too, because the vets are not. Nobody's taking ownership and saying, And it's just like, and that's why there's one thing after the other,
Yeah.
these bonehead plays. Shy Tuttle jumps up sides. Pinheiro, you knew he was going to miss that kick. You just knew it because that's who they
Yeah.
are right now. Like that,
Right.
like they're just going to fail, and they all have like it also, the Eddie Pinheiro, like it's like
The body
that's
language.
what they're doing.
Yeah.
That they all game long they go.
We're playing losing football. Everybody is out there with a loser's mentality.
Yes.
And I get it, dude. You're getting run down. You're 1-12. I understand. But we're going out there and we're playing losing football because we have losing mentality right now.
Right.
You can see it all across the board. The drops, dude, it's not like DJ Chark doesn't have plates for hands. He's not my buddy Plates, right? He can catch the football. But right now, he's in his own head too, it would seem. He knows that they're losing, and he knows that the pressure is on for every opportunity you have at a big play. It may be the only one in that game that you have an opportunity for a big play. So there is extra pressure on every single one of those situations. That doesn't mean that he shouldn't be able to perform under pressure. He should. But I understand the added pressure, and that adds to that loser's mentality. When you don't complete that play, it just snowballs, man, and you feel terrible, and you have no confidence, and that is showing across the board for this Panthers team right now.
Yeah, and I know, like a guy like Patrick Mahomes wasn't yelling at his guys, but you know what? He showed emotion.
Yeah.
When those guys are playing losing football, when those guys are having drops, he's showing emotion. He shows that he cares. Like our whole team is going, Eddie Pinheiro. Sorry. Speaking of receivers and drops, Mike K talked about TMJ. Do you want to touch on TMJ at all? And like, why aren't we giving him anything? Like the season's over. Might as well just kind of see what you have, right?
Yeah, that's the really interesting thing is that me and you touched on it briefly last week. You asked me if there was anything that we wanted to talk about with TMJ. And I was like, I don't think so, because I just don't know that there's anything on the horizon for him, right? Mm-hmm. And Mike K had a article go up from the Charlotte Observer today, and it talks about how, in such a miserable season for the entire Panthers team, maybe the most frustrating one has been Terrace Marshall Jr.'s. And it's not in the way of injury that you would think would make a second year or third year receiver's season very difficult in trying, right? It's simply not getting opportunities and falling out of favor. There was some little wordings within the article that I thought were interesting. And one of them was TMJ saying, I'm all ears, I'm listening more, and I'm doing more than I am talking. So perhaps there was a issue of him being a little bit vocal about his displeasure or disdain in the offense and his usage. Maybe that threw him into a doghouse. Now that's an insinuation. That's not me saying that I know that, but the wording of it kind of played into that idea. The other thing was that there was or wording from Chris Tabor that it's not just about doing on offense and it's not just about doing on defense. There's three phases of the game. So he's insinuating that maybe the special teams aspect isn't Terrace Marshall's forte. But my issue, man, that I'm having, and again, I don't want to seem like I'm piling on DJ Chark today because that's not the case. But when we see a guy like Chark who is struggling with drops and he's struggling to produce on a consistent basis, why wouldn't you say at this juncture of the season, we need to have everybody earning their playing time and their keep? And if we're seeing a guy struggle and he's not in the best mindset or he just doesn't seem to have the confidence, why wouldn't you let Terrace Marshall Jr. go out there? DJ's not playing special teams, right? Like he's not out there on the special teams. That's not anything that we have to worry about. So let Terrace essentially just take that position for a day, for one game. Mm-hmm. Let him play it and see what happens. When we made a concerted effort to push the ball downfield last week against the Saints, that's a situation that I think Terrace Marshall Jr. could have thrived in. And when you saw DJ struggling and dropping those passes, that would have been when, if Terrace had been active, that's when I probably would have said, hey, look, let's make a switch. You know what I mean? Before we started recording, me and you were talking, and you mentioned that they essentially kind of put ISM in there for DJ Chark, right? And, and it seemed almost at a time that that's what they were doing, that they were like, hey, we got to find somebody else. We got to get somebody else in there right now because we're struggling. Terrace Marshall Jr. profiles very well into a Z receiver role. Why not use him there, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and Mingo with that drop pass or the missed opportunity to Mingo deep, that's a situation that I think that Terrace maybe has a little bit more speed, maybe that timing there, could have worked a little bit better. I look, man, it's all speculation and it's all hindsight. But what does it hurt to give this kid a chance at this point? And everything that in that article said that he is being a professional and he's ready to go. I know that at the end of this, he probably has to have a change of scenery. I understand that it likely doesn't work out here. But I don't know why for the next 4 games, you don't at least give him a chance to rebuild some of his confidence, give Bryce a chance to throw to another receiver that maybe can do something better than what some of these other guys are doing. We haven't seen him on the field for weeks. You can't tell me that we know for sure that this guy doesn't have ability to do something that we are lacking right now on this offense.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Worst case scenario, you showcase him for another team that wants to trade for him. You know,
that's it. What's the downfall in that, right?
Yeah. Say this. Say next year, you still got two. Good. You say Terrace Marshall does good enough to be a starting D, right? You have Mingo as your big slot. And then you go after a big dog as your X receiver, whether that might be a Justin Jefferson, because, Vikings always move on from their guys before the next contract. And they've seen that they can play, Addison. They got guys. It could be a T. Higgins. It could be Michael Pittman. It could be a Terry McLaurin. There's like a ton of guys that are going to be out there this year. Or it's a deep receiver class. And use your first pick on a stud receiver. Regardless of what you do, if we somehow say this guy can be a starting Z with Bryce and already has that rapport, you with the right coaching staff, you fix your receiving core right then. That's a long shot because chances are Terrace Marshall just isn't a good starting Z, but might be. Who knows? And you got him on a rookie contract.
Yeah, and even if he's not, though, what is the damage for the next 5 games? You can't say, well, you're going to take this huge drop in production if you go him over a Chark or something like that. Like, that's not the case, man. Like, we're not losing out. It's not like we're saying, let's bench this prolific, game-changing receiver for us this season. It just hasn't worked out that way. I think that there is a pride aspect here with the front office that they don't want to sit here and say, hey, this guy that we brought in to do that, we don't want to bench him for the guy that we've said doesn't have it. Because that'll make us look, again, like egg on our face. I'm over the pride thing, dude. I want to move on from this front office. I want to move on from this. I don't want to admit mistakes. I want to cover our tracks. We gotta start having transparency, and we gotta have incentive-based playing time. I need guys to be playing because they earned it. And I just don't think that Terrace Marshall Jr. sitting back and being professional and still working is a reason for him not to be playing. You know what I mean? Like, that just seems like a wild idea to me. But what do I know, right?
Yeah, I mean, look at the Jets. I mean, the Jets are morons, and they benched Zach Wilson.
Yeah,
and then they lost every game going down the stretch. And then they did the exact same thing this year, but they were like, you know what? We were wrong a second time. Let's bring Zach Wilson.
Yeah, right. And when you talk about those receivers that you could add, like big name receivers, if you had to make like a splash trade type of situation because somebody's ready to move on, how about Stephon Diggs right now in Buffalo?
Yeah.
Like, they're on the cusp of not making the playoffs. He has seen his production and his targets go way down. We already saw that they had some issues going into the season, like conversations between him and Josh that just didn't seem terrific. If you have the ability to go and get a guy like that, I understand it would take a lot of like draft capital, right? But this is a proven receiver at a high level. I would go and I would get him. You know what I mean? I would go and I would do whatever you had to do to get a Stephon Diggs type of player. And that's all hypothetical, but we're talking about what do you do to solve or to fix this team in a quick way, right? Because we have a window with Bryce Young's rookie contract. So you got to act urgently. You can't do this whole like, well, let's just slow play into it. No. You're already behind the 8 ball. It is time to fix things as quickly as possible. And sure, you don't want to like mortgage your entire future. But if it takes giving up your 2nd round pick this year, 2nd round pick next year, or we don't have a 2nd next year, but a 2nd and a 3rd or something like that and a future 3rd, go for it, dude. Go for it right away. Include a Terrace Marshall Jr. Give them an opportunity to say, well, hey, maybe we get this guy that didn't get playing time. Maybe he works out for us.
Yeah. It's we don't need to go too much in the receivers just because it's all hypothetical. I will say that it looked like 2 games ago they made an effort to get ISM the ball. That didn't work out. Last game they made an effort to get DJ Chark the ball. That didn't work out. and both times Bryce went back to old reliable and Mingo and Thielen, and Mingo is getting better game after game after game after game, and he's getting open. So that is a positive, optimistic thing that you can look at. Mingo does look like he is the real deal, as does Mr. Chuba Hubbard. He runs. I just wish they would run a gap scheme more, because that would help get these pass rushers off of Bryce. Everything's a zone. Like, it's just like, run at these pass rushers so they don't like get a clean run at Bryce every single time. I don't understand it, and it looks.
And they went away from 12 personnel, and they did operate under center again a little bit. They did show some RPO looks that I appreciated. And the 12 personnel may have been a situation because of Ian Thomas's injury, right? He left with an ankle injury, so maybe we just didn't want to run Steven Sullivan as an inline tight end, because that's just not his jam, dude. As a blocker, he's going to get run over more times than not. But I do think that they've got to figure out a way, because that 12 personnel is a way that we have seen them find success, man. And it's built more for this offense and the personnel. So I really do think they've got to make a concerted effort. I know they just signed a practice squad tight end. They just signed a new guy to the practice squad. I think is Chris Pierce, maybe. Not entirely sure who he is, what he does. But you know what? He's a tight end body that they clearly are saying we need that right now. But I there's ways, man. And I want to see this coaching staff for the next 4 games just try to get a little bit more creative. Isn't even the word. In tune, in touch with what we have. I just want to see us try that, man. Because you're right. Chuba Hubbard, dude, that guy is legit, man. This dude has to be in our running back plans going forward. If you don't want to call him your workhorse and say that he's your stud, that's fine. I'm not opposed to that. But he has got to be in the equation, and he's got to be looked at as a future piece of this offense. And our offensive line, you retool it. You know what I mean? You change up the offensive scheme, the blocking scheme.
Right. Yeah.
Like there's an opportunity there to make that your identity, right? Until you get the receivers around that you want to be able to focus the offense on Bryce Young.
Correct. Yeah. A lot of the stuff can be schemed. And I think getting healthy will definitely help. We'll see. But yeah, Chubert's the truth. Chuba Hubbard is the truth.
That's his legal full name, Chubert Hubbard.
I want to touch on Mr. Derek Brown is freaking awesome.
Yeah,
he's so good. He is, man. If it comes down to one or the other between him and Brian Burns, keep Derek Brown, give him all the money. That dude is a freaking stud, and that's like think about Jeffrey Simmons, Chris Jones. Like, he can be those guys, and he can be that like tomorrow. Like, he's entering that stage of his prime, and those are game wreckers. And I love this dude. That dude works. He is that guy. Do you agree with that? Is that kind of like where you stand too?
Hell yeah. 100% that's where I stand. And I think anyone that's watched these games this year can easily point out Derek Brown as one of the only consistent major producers for this defense or for this team. Now, the defense, man, we've got guys with effort, right? We've got guys that do play well. But Derek Brown is the one that constantly makes an impact. And I know that it may not show up in the box score. He may not have, double-digit sacks. He may not have 5 or 6 sacks. This dude is a game changer. They have to scheme for him in the run game, which is that's his forte. That is his dominance, right? He is going to eat up blocks. He's going to close gaps. And he makes everything difficult for who is lined up in front of him. I mean, he probably gives opposing offensive lines nightmares the night before games. We know, and we're about to see him up against Atlanta again, and we know that he has dominated Lindstrom, who is one of the top guards in the league. I mean, this dude, Lindstrom is literally one of the best offensive guards in the NFL, and Derek Brown has had his number the past 2 or 3 years, and in a major way. We saw it in week 1. I hope that we continue to see it this week. But then you look at his ability to get into the backfield. He's not doing it as much right now because he's the only person. It's him and Brian Burns. Like, those are the only threats. And Burns right now, I don't know that Burns is like having a rough go of it necessarily, but he's not being as productive as he usually is. And maybe some of it is a mental thing. Maybe he's a little bit checked out on the season. Maybe he's a little bit frustrated. He's definitely still seeing all the double teams and things like that. Like, there's two players that people game plan against us on defense, Derek Brown and Brian Burns. So every single week they say, look, you just take out these guys and we can handle everybody else on the team. With our secondary being healthy, I do think that helps both of them a lot, because having JC Horn out there, Horn, having him out there, like it creates this extra time for our defensive line to be able to get after somebody, right? Even when there's not added pressure, it gives a little bit extra incentive that, hey, look, we know we've got better coverage in the back end. Let's put a little bit of emphasis. Let's really get after the quarterback on this. So yeah, man, Derek Brown, in a nutshell, if there's one person on this defense that I would want to continue on with, it's Derek Brown. That doesn't mean that he is the only one, but if I had to choose, like gun to my head, it is Derek Brown is going to be the guy that I think is your defensive building block.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, you talking about Lindstrom, he got an ankle injury on last game, and he's questionable. They said Arthur Smith said he's probably going to play, but hasn't practiced.
They're just setting him up for when Derek absolutely suns him again. They have an excuse. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's like that's one of those. He was completely healthy coming out of the game, and then all of a sudden they saw Derek Brown on the schedule. Like, hey, by the way, he's dealing with a major ankle, so if he looks a little bit slow and gets eaten up, it's not on him.
Yeah, man, that dude.
I'm totally kidding. Derek doesn't need any kind of excuse. He's going to eat that kid's lunch anyways.
Man, next year, my jersey is going to be a Derek Brown jersey. I just love that guy, man.
Yeah.
He's awesome. All right, let's just move on from this game. I'm just tired of talking about it. Let's start talking about the news. One thing we have to touch down.
I wish we were doing any kind of touchdowns.
We got this guy right here. Dude, you know where I got this koozie? I'm showing a koozie for people listening. I'm showing a koozie with Cam Newton on it. I got this koozie at the freaking Super Bowl because that's where Cam Newton was. And we're not putting any respect on this dude's name. I don't want to talk about it very long. And it's just so annoying that anytime that this guy has something to say, he's a problem. And that we put this stigma on him for his entire career. Man, I remember that he is different. Cam Newton is different as a human being. He is what's the word? Charismatic. He is out there. He dabbing all over the league. He's a big personality, which is always easy to attack and hate on. And he played a different style of football that people can easily put stats up against and be like, see, he didn't do this to this, and it's like, shut up. Like, who? Why do we don't do this with anyone else? With no one else. Like, Julian Edelman can go and say all he wants on TV. David Carr can go out on TV and say that Jalen Hurts should be benched for Marcus Mariota. And no one talks about it. The minute that Cam Newton says anything, it's an attack. You have 30 seconds to talk about this because I want to move on because I don't want to spend too much time on this.
No, 100%. Cam Newton's a league MVP, right? He led a Ted Ginn as the number one wide receiver in his group to a Super Bowl appearance. Went 15-1 in that season, won the league MVP. You know, you talk about like these talking heads that say these things. They always started off with his outfits. First of all, just remove that. What does it matter what he wears? I don't care, dude. Is it my style? No, it's not. But I also just wear black tees. That's all that I wear, right? Like, I'm a very simple person. I don't have the ability to pull off the things that Cam Newton can pull off. He still looks cool as shit no matter what he's wearing, dude. So what does it matter? It also doesn't matter to a debate about football. So you go into the football aspect of it. There's guys like Jason McIntyre who filled in for Colin Cowherd, and he puts up this graphic where he's comparing the careers of Dak Prescott and Cam Newton, and it completely fails to mention the 5,000 plus yards rushing and 75 touchdowns that he accrued on the ground. And he wants to sit there and cherry pick those stats and present them in a very biased manner to fit his narrative. I cannot stand that, dude. And I understand, man, it's talk radio. It's a similar medium of media of what we're doing here, where we talk about things, we give our opinion. I get it. But this is a dude with a national platform that is supposed to have a little bit more integrity and a little bit more journalistic respect for presenting things. Trash. That dude is trash. He called Chicago a war zone. That was the first time that I was out on that idiot. And then he starts talking about all of these things that, I mean, dude, what does it matter comparing Dak Prescott to Cam Newton right now when all Cam said is that there are game changers and there are game managers? We talked about it earlier. Game manager is not a bad thing. He is simply saying that what their team asks them to do is operate and execute within that realm of responsibilities. Great. That means that they have a pretty solid team around them. And then you point to a guy like Josh Allen. You say, well, he's a game changer. You know what? Josh Allen would benefit a hell of a lot from being more of a game manager than a game changer. Because when he starts playing that hero ball, that's when they get in trouble against teams that they should be blowing out. But he throws 3 interceptions because he thinks that he has to do everything himself.
Yeah.
Pat Mahomes is a game changer. But they also ask him to execute that Andy Reid offense. It's when he gets out of structure and he creates. Yeah, absolutely, man. He's different. There are some guys that are different. Cam Newton was different. That doesn't mean that it's a bad thing for him to be able to give his opinion. Mm-hmm. If anybody should be able to speak on it, it's Cam Newton. He knows exactly what it means to be a difference maker as opposed to a game manager. What the hell are we talking about?
Yeah, I'm gonna say something that's true, and we can move on from that. But
sorry, that was more than 30 seconds. My bad.
There was at the beginning of the year, I did a 32 and 32, and I picked the Cowboys to win the Super Bowl. They were my my number 2 power ranked team, but I picked them to win the Super Bowl. And I went on, and I think I was the only one I could even find to defend Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
Everyone was hating on Dak Prescott, said he's done, the interception, blah, 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 blah. And this is the guy that you want to compare to that guy.
Yeah.
It's so strange, and you can take what you will for why people do that, but it's a lot easier to hate on Cam than Dak. But it's a lot easier to hate on Dak than some other quarterbacks in the league for whatever reason that you think that exists.
Right.
Cam did talk though about Bryce. He said you can't give Bryce a grade yet because he doesn't have any help. He has nobody around him. Do you kind of agree with Cam on that?
Yeah, 100%. And we've talked about that a lot this season, right? Now, where I will say is that I think that you can absolutely critique and judge Bryce to an extent because you can't throw every aspect of it away, right? He's still out there playing every week. So you can 100% look at what you see on the field and make some judgments from that, make some reads about what he is and isn't great at right now. Where you can't make an evaluation on Bryce or give a grade on Bryce is what kind of player is he? You see what kind of player he is in this situation. In this current situation, I don't think any player would look good. And I mean that sincerely, not just any of the rookies. I'm not talking about, hey, swap CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson in, and I bet you they're better. Maybe they do produce more from a statistical standpoint. Maybe they don't. It's not even worth really like exploring that hypothetical. But for Bryce's standpoint, the minute that you look at all of these other systems and all of these other offensive schemes, if you just envision putting Bryce in one of those scenarios, do you honestly think that he plays the same way that he's playing here in Carolina right now? Because I don't. I'm not of that mindset. And that's what Cam is alluding to. He's saying that if we want to be able to put Brock Purdy in an MVP conversation, which he absolutely deserves to be in, we also should be able to look at Bryce Young and use that same context of everything around him and say, that could be why he's not playing well. It's really easy, man. It doesn't have to be this like huge thick piece of a situation. It can just be offensive line is terrible. It is a turnstile on the interior. Your weapons are not performing well. Adam Thielen is having a productive season. He is limited on what he can do. And he's playing well, man. I don't mean this as a shot. He is limited in what he brings to the offense. That is just a fact. The other guys on offense, I mean, where would they be on other NFL rosters? What would they be? I don't know that they're starting for anybody else other than the Carolina Panthers. And and some of that is our own doing. Some of that is it just didn't meet the expectations that everybody had. That's okay, man. It's a bad year. But Bryce Young is the future of this franchise. He has put some good things on tape and he has put some bad things on tape. That is part of a rookie season.
Right.
And all of that can still be worked out in the offseason and in the coming seasons during his development and progression in the NFL.
Yeah. You seen CJ Stroud lately? Like, he's a rookie. Like, that's not like a hater thing.
No.
Like, he lost Tank Dell. I mean, he still has talent on that
Nico
side.
Collins was hurt. The offensive line didn't play well against the Jets, and he put up a very rookie quarterback stat line.
Yeah.
And they lost to the Jets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it happens. I'm going to keep pushing on through.
Yep.
I also don't want to talk about this very long, but there are Bill Belichick rumors. What sucks is that I think that that's a Tepper move. I think that is something that he would 100% do.
Right.
How much do you think that that's in play?
So there was a report that came out that Tepper, I think it was from Panthers Nation, they put out that there was a report Tepper was interested in finding out what it would take to trade for Bill Belichick back in like November. That's a bad, ominous sign for his interest in Bill Belichick. I understand Bill Belichick's record. It's impressive, right? If you just look at it. It also has a big caveat in that in a guy named Tom Brady, who also went down to Tampa and won a Super Bowl there. I think that he has proven that he can play without Bill Belichick. I don't know that Bill Belichick has proven that he can coach without Tom Brady. Maybe he can. But if the situation in New England is bad enough that they want him out and he is this all-time great coach, what about this situation in Carolina makes you think that he can come here and do way better with what we have than what he has up there? Now, I'm not saying that we have worse supporting players and personnel than what New England has. He can make things happen on defense, no doubt about it. But he also went into a season with Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator. He also went in with Bill O'Brien as the savior for his offense. I don't see that decision-making and that outlook on what works in today's NFL translating well to Carolina and what we want to do with Bryce Young. So I think from a context standpoint, you got to look at it and say, maybe if we had, an established NFL veteran quarterback who was already playing well and we just needed a change in coaching, maybe Bill Belichick can come in and win you games and get you over that line. Here, and I know Cam just spoke glowingly about what Bill can do as far as building a culture. Just because you can build a culture doesn't necessarily mean it's the culture that you need for this team.
Yeah.
I'm not sold on wanting Bill Belichick here in Carolina. I don't want him personally. And also, just from a strictly personal fan standpoint, I don't want to root for this guy. I don't want to root for Bill Belichick, man. I'm sorry. Like, there are so many other candidates that we could try. Please don't force me to root for the guy that I have rooted against my entire fandom, essentially. This dude beat us in the Super Bowl. Yeah, I'm still salty about it. I don't like him. I don't like the way he goes about things. I think that he's an old mind in the NFL. He was a great old mind at one point, but he's an old mind right now. I want to move away from that, dude, personally. I want something different.
Yeah. I'm just going to say this, and I'm going to move on from this because I don't want to talk about the whole coaching search. But somebody that's moving up my draft board, my coach board real fast, Brian freaking Flores, man. What he's done to that Minnesota defense, unbelievable. Yep. And talk about a leader of men, man. I love that guy.
The only thing that gives me pause about him was how difficult of a time Tua had with him, and how he wanted Tua to do certain things and didn't really have the offensive viewpoint to get the most out of Tua. I worry a little bit about that fit, but I'm with you, man. Like I think he's a terrific coach as well. But we got a bunch of options, man. But keep Bill Belichick away from me.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think the only idea is Bill O'Brien was his coordinator at Alabama, maybe
right.
For Bryce Young, whatever. Moving on.
There we go.
We don't need to talk about that anymore.
Nope.
All right, let's just go ahead and move on to this week's game against the Atlanta Falcons. Man, we lost the Saints twice. We lost the Falcons once, man. Just give us one. If we get swept by the Falcons and the Saints.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about how if we'd have just beat the Saints, you would have been fine with losing all the other games. I feel about that same way about the Falcons, man. I just don't like them. And I also don't want to take 2 losses to a Desmond Ridder-led team. I don't want it, man. I don't like anything about that dude's game. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, there's a personal aspect that I don't want to get beat by somebody that I think is not terrific at that position that they're playing. And I just think that Bryce Young should be a better quarterback in his career. And I'm like, man, give him a little bit of a confidence boost here. Like, go out and beat these dumbass dirty birds for 1 week.
Oh, man. So let me give you something optimistic before you go and tell us how bad we're going to lose.
Well, man, don't make it seem like I'm some sort of like Grim Reaper of
Panthers. You're the Grim Reaper, man. Yeah, it's all you. No. So the Atlanta Falcons are absolutely horrific at home, on the road. Absolutely terrible on the road. They're 2-4, and one of those 4 games was them beating the Jets 13-8. So like they don't score a lot of points on the road as well. Panthers at home actually playing pretty decent when they're not going against the Cowboys. They have played one team at home with a losing record, and that was the Saints, and they lost that game by 3. Every other team they played had a winning record. They beat the Texans, and they're pretty much in every other game. Like they were in with Minnesota for a while, and then of course we beat ourselves. So there is some optimism, kind of. Grady Jarrett's out. We went against him the first time. That's a good thing for us. So our big guys that we're going against are like Onyemata, if he plays. Their other tackle looks like he's going to be out. So basically Onyemata and Calais Campbell. Pass rush, I'm not super worried about.
Yeah.
They do still have a good run defense, but we've seen like that we can run the ball against anyone. Give me your idea of what you're looking for that we need to do to win.
That Grady Jarrett being out is a big one, right? Because we know that we've struggled with pressure being generated up the middle of our offensive line. So that's a big win, I think, for us. That is an advantage. I'll rattle off some of the Atlanta statistical rankings real quick and then get into some things that I think are interesting. The Falcons are on offense. They are 24th in points scored, 6th in rushing yards, 21st in passing yards, and 23rd in sacks allowed. So there is a opportunity to generate some pressure against this Atlanta team, especially with Lindstrom being a little bit banged up. From a rushing yard standpoint, that's the big worry, right? They got Bijan Robinson, they've got Tyler Algier, Cordero Patterson. They run the ball really well. They operate out of 12 personnel a lot. They know that they put in a jumbo package. That's their bread and butter, and they know it. From a defensive standpoint, they're 12th in points allowed, 15th in rushing yards allowed, 9th in passing yards, and 26th in sacks generated. So without Grady Jarrett, and they're already not a prolific team when it comes to rushing the passer, there is an opportunity for us here, I think, man. And I think that you look at what we can do offensively. We went into that Buccaneers game. Now, granted, there were some weather issues with that probably forced our hand to be a little bit more run dependent than we maybe had anticipated coming into that game. But the Buccaneers team is a really good run defense. And we played smash mouth football for the most part in that game, and we ran it up the gut. We're coming off a game with New Orleans Saints. Look, we lost 28-6. We rushed the ball for over 200 yards in that game. We're running the ball well right now. I would continue to do that. Mm-hmm. And you look at it from a defensive standpoint, they're 15th in rushing yards allowed. So, yeah, they're not like a walkover, but they're also not this brick wall of a defense that you can't do that with. And we're at home. You're going to have the crowd behind you. Work on some play action off of that. That is what I want to see, man. Under center, run the ball. Miles Sanders has even been looking sharper in these past couple of weeks. Use that tandem of running backs. Create advantages for your quarterback to operate some play action. And let's see what we can do. Passing yards, they're 9th. But that's also just because look at the brand of football that they play, right? And that's on the defensive side, they're 9th. The brand of football they play, man, it's not like teams don't have to throw the ball around to catch up to them. They're in close games. They're not a world beater on offense. Like, there's not a lot of times that teams are playing from behind and they have to throw the ball a bunch. They run the ball against them. It's the same thing that they do against the Panthers a lot of times. Now, we have a really good secondary, but part of the reason why our secondary ranks are so good from a coverage standpoint is because teams run it on us more. That's just what they do. So I'll get into some stats now. Here's one of the things that is concerning to me, and this just shows you how a lack of explosiveness is one of our identifiers on offense. 18.3% of the Carolina possessions have reached the red zone or scored prior. That's the lowest rate in the league. 18.3% of our possessions have reached the red zone. We're not even getting there, man. And we talked about it at the beginning of this game, or at the beginning of this podcast. There were instances with the drop passes. That's what's causing a lot of these issues, man. We're not executing when we have the opportunity to get into these areas. We've scored just one touchdown from outside the red zone. One. Every other time that we have scored a touchdown has been within the 20-yard line. That's tough, man. That really limits what we're able to do and what we could force a defense to account for, right? It's easy to game plan against us right now. Now, what we're talking about with the passing abilities for Carolina against this Atlanta defense, 79% of the touchdowns against Atlanta have come via passing. That's the highest rate in the league. So that's our contrasting stat for the day that you know that I love doing. They allow 80% of the touchdowns come from throwing the football. 56% of the touchdowns against Carolina have come against the ground, have come via running the ball. Now, 50% of Atlanta's touchdowns have come from running the ball. So we're in a world of trouble there, man. They like to run the ball. We don't like to stop the run. We have gotten a little bit better on that. So I do think that there is an opportunity that we can kind of like not stop them from running the football, but limit the effectiveness. I think that we have a nice plan in place on how to do that in the last few weeks. I think we've demonstrated that. And Najiro Evero is going to come into this knowing what they want to do, and he's going to do his best to take that away. I feel more comfortable with that side of things. I just don't know what we can do from an offensive standpoint to create enough points, man. Like, honestly, I'm struggling really hard to see a route where we score more than 10 points in a football game for the rest of the season. And I think that it's going to be difficult to keep Atlanta from scoring more than 10 points.
Yeah. So I'm looking at this. All right. Let me get some more optimism in here.
Okay.
Last so hard. Last 8 games, the Falcons are 4-4. And their quarterbacks that they have played are Sam Howell, Baker Mayfield, Will Levis, Josh Dobbs, Kyler Murray, Derek Carr, Tim Boyle, Baker Mayfield again. And they're 4-4 against those quarterbacks. And those and Will Levis threw for 4 touchdowns against them. I just had that up. That's why I just looked at it. So it can happen. There's optimism.
Sure.
But man, we suck. It's so freaking terrible.
Yeah, man.
I just don't see it at all. And I'm tired of going in there with an optimistic view and just be super disappointed. Sure. I think this is going to be the second worst game of the year, maybe, outside of the Raiders and Vikings. I think it's going to be, maybe they both have single digits. I don't know. But we ain't going to win. I just don't think we're going to win. They're playing for something. We're playing for nothing. We have a loser's mentality. They actually think they can win the division, and they can. I mean, their schedule. Yeah, they're us, Colts, Bears, Saints.
Now, one thing I will say about that, when you talk about their winner's mentality and they think that they can win that division, and we talked about how much we love Derek Brown. Did you hear what he said when he was asked about, hey, so I know that you're out of the playoffs, but like, do you have any added motivation to ruin the dream season for the Falcons? And he was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, if I got to be on the couch, somebody else is going to be there with me. He was like, I want to keep everybody from what they want to do. So maybe there is a little motivation there on at least the defensive side of like, hey, man, we don't want these little shitbirds to be the ones going in for our conference and showing out for us. Like they would rather have the Buccaneers do it at this point,
Yeah. So would I.
Maybe there's a little bit of added motivation there. I don't know, man. But do we want to just get right into score predictions? Because
let's get away. Just so we're clear, our team ain't Derek Brown. Like they don't have the same mentality as Derek Brown does.
Man, I was trying to do your thing where I was trying to find optimism and throw in some good news there.
Oh man! All right, so I've already bet this game. I've taken the Falcons -3 and the under. I have the Falcons winning 16-10. Falcons.
Okay. I'm gonna go 20-10 Carolina. Yeah. I know, man. I completely changed up there. So here's the deal, man. I think that we get 7 off of a pick 6 on Desmond Ridder. I think that Bryce Young throws a touchdown to Jonathan Mingo. And I think we get 2 field goals. And I think that the field goals are in close because I think that we move the ball a little bit on Sunday. There is something, we're going to get one of these games, man. We're going to win 2 games this season. And I think that the divisional aspect here, I think that, I don't know. Maybe there's not a great reason for me thinking this. It's one of those gut feelings. 20-10, Carolina finally scores 20 points. Bryce Young throws a touchdown. I don't think he throws any interceptions in this one. I think he plays a pretty clean game. And I think that Chuba goes for 100 again. 20-10, Carolina. Give me the second win of the season.
Yeah, we are better at home. We really are. Except
I just don't think that the Falcons are very good, man. I just don't think that they're a very good football team.
Got destroyed by them.
Yeah, 100%. But we were down 14-6 with 6 minutes to go, right? And that's despite all of our shooting ourselves in the foot. So if you can limit just a few of those things, if you can catch a couple of the drops, if you can not jump off sides when they're trying to get you on a 4th and short and they're trying to get you on a snap count, Shy Tuttle looking right at you, bud. Just hold the ground, man. Just hold on to the damn turf. Don't let go until you see someone move. I don't know, man. No reason for it. 20-10, Carolina. Let's go.
Man, I hope you're right so much. I hate the Falcons.
I hate it, man, and I'm going to keep on picking the Panthers every chance I get against them.
So what can you change the Mingo touchdown to a Thielen? I still need to get it over 4.
You need a Thielen touchdown?
Touchdowns.
Sure.
Just in the next 4 games, I need 1. So he was like, he had 4 in like the first 5 games. I was like, I think
Thielen's going to have a touchdown against the Packers on Christmas Eve.
Perfect. I'll take it.
He's a cold weather Christmas looking dude. Thielen's going to get that touchdown on Christmas Eve.
Sweet. As long as he gets 1. I just need 1 more.
There you go.
All right, man. Well, I think we had a pretty good show. So I think it's time to get out of here. You just want to end it like we do every time with a big old keep pounding and beat the Falcons.
Keep pounding. Go get win number 2.